so much. I want you to know I have several songs in my head as well, but they're not going to come out of my mouth. It's good to see y'all again. Seems like it's been a decade since I've seen y'all. And Paul, it's good to see you here sitting up at the front. Y'all pardon me for just a moment. I need to inspect something. You can go ahead and turn to Jeremiah chapter 1, if you will. Yep, this guitar right here was the one that was used by Franz Gruber when they played Silent Night. I thought it looked original. That's pretty good, Jonathan. You've been keeping it hid all these years. And I did not know that. I know Madison now has become real famous here at this church because I see her picture in the banner about every week. But who was that lady in the red dress that was singing beside her? I'm having a memory lapse. But Ansley, there is nothing funny about the book of Jeremiah, I hate to tell you. I mean, this is the part I dreaded the most, was coming here and telling you that we're going to have to be on the level this week. Of course, several people have told me that I'm on the level anyway because I got my bubble in the middle. But I want to go over, first of all, just a couple of minutes, and I do have a watch today. Thank you, Lord, I have a watch. We will get out around 12 or no later than about 12:05, somewhere along in there. But now I can't make any guarantees about the rest of the week. If you will look at your outline, which hopefully you received when you came in. I don't know if we ran out or not, but it's front and back. And so I wanted to call your attention to the back part because normally we would not look there. I mean, I wouldn't. I probably would never notice that there was something on the back. But on the back, it's got kings and rulers in the time of Jeremiah. Now, there's several names here. To be honest with you, you only need to know two. Well, King Josiah, he's going to be killed here probably this morning in the first of our studies, so he will really not be an active participant this week. A couple of these guys ruled for 3 months. I don't even really pay any attention to them. They did nothing in the 3 months. The two you really need to be aware of is King Jehoiakim. Now, one of the things that's confusing about Jeremiah's, some of these kings have 2 or 3 different names, and it makes it hard. Really, it is hard. But King Jehoiakim ruled for 11 years. And then you have another one for 3 months. I think he actually had 3 names. I put 2 of them on here. But the only thing he did was make God angry. He didn't really accomplish anything. You will need to know Zedekiah. He was the last king before they went into captivity. He was the last king, King Zedekiah. And he also ruled for 11 years. And all these people were sons of Josiah, so really it's just a family feud. And then Gedaliah, I've put here that he was a governor. He was not a king. When the Babylonians took over Judea and took them into captivity, this Gedaliah was left in charge by King Nebuchadnezzar. So they assassinated him. I didn't have the nerve to tell you all that. But that's why I only had 2 months. He was assassinated. Major predictions in Jeremiah. You may or may not be interested in these. The Messiah will be known as the righteous branch. Branch is capitalized person. Babylonian captivity will be for 70 years. That's 25:11. That's a famous verse, but we won't really go over it necessarily. 29:11, God promises to bless the Jewish people after the captivity was over. 30:7, you need to know that one probably. The tribulation is also called the time of Jacob's trouble. For those of you that like prophecy and so forth, that will be Wednesday night. We will have a session Wednesday night about the restoration of Israel and sort of what's going on, and try to give you 2 or 3 things to look out for this year that are going to mean that we're near the coming of the Lord. Then the New Covenant, the Bible scholars say that's the most important part of the book, chapter 31, verses 31 to 34. We're beneficiaries of the New Covenant. The longest Old Testament passage quoted in the New Testament is quoted in Hebrews chapter 8. The eternal covenant, the Davidic covenant, and all that good stuff. Anyway, these are just some major predictions in the book of Jeremiah. Then on the other side is your outline. The title of the study is Jeremiah, Faithful to the Mission. And I want to say for the 39th consecutive year, I did not choose this book. This is what the Southern Baptists have recommended. We do not have to study it, but I really couldn't think of something else, that I really wanted to go over. So I decided we'd plunge into Jeremiah. The problem with Jeremiah is it's 52 chapters. There's obviously no way in 4 nights or 4 months that we could cover 52 chapters. Therefore, we'll just do pick what I think will be best to understand the book, and also just, I hope like this morning you'll get something practical out of the call of Jeremiah this morning. Now, obviously we're not going to be able to do all that stuff between now and 12 o'clock. So we're focusing on this morning the introduction to the outline and to chapter 1. That's all. Tonight at 6:30, we'll start in chapter 7. So actually, this day, even though we're going to meet twice, is going to be considered one session. Tomorrow night should be easy to fit in the time frame, which is necessary because you all will be full of fish. And Tuesday night, Jeremiah makes by the way, tomorrow night, I'm going to add this in if I don't forget it. I'm going to explain to you there's a verse in Jeremiah that a lot of people think refers to the Christmas tree. And I'm going to talk about it tomorrow night. It won't take but a few minutes just to go over that. Is he talking about condemning the observance, you having a Christmas tree? So that's in chapter 10. I forgot to put it on the outline, but I'll add it in tomorrow night. Tuesday night, Jeremiah makes the strangest real estate purchase in the history. You've never had one at Swain's that would be this strange as Tuesday night. And then Wednesday night, to close out with the actual downfall of the city of Jerusalem. Now, I copied the title of the outline from the Southern Baptist, Faithful to the Mission. And the other stuff, is what I thought we needed to study. I did not get their book. I don't have the book by the Southern Baptist put out on the January Bible study. No particular reason, mainly because Neil didn't buy me one. But, I'm doing good enough to get Neil to pay for my lunch now, much less to buy me a book. But anyway, Neil and I had it lucky Friday, though. We sat at a table, and a guy left a $5 tip, and the lady thought it was me and Neil. Treated us with the utmost respect. I didn't have the nerve to tell her it was the other guy that left the money. The restoration of Israel is the one that those of you that are interested in prophecy, Wednesday night, I'm hoping, will be the only night that will go. We might need to split the session, or at least go an hour and a half. But the others will be about an hour to an hour and 15 minutes. And then the conclusion, I'm going to talk to you just a little bit about what happened to Jeremiah. Because the Bible doesn't really. If Jeremiah wrote this, he can't tell us how he died. So I'll do that Wednesday night. And if you would, can you throw that map on the board for us here. This is something, your sound system here amazes me. I come in here with this thing, it was out of a magazine, and Ann said this, I've never seen it run before, but she took a picture of it with her cell phone, and then somehow, I don't know how, but she certainly deserves to be mentioned for Member of the Week, which means you can wear a Georgia Bulldog tie next Sunday. All right. There are two kingdoms. This is history now. I need to talk about history for just a little bit. The nation of Israel, after Solomon died, Solomon was their king, it split into two countries. The 10 northern tribes make up what was called Israel. Now, sometimes you'll see the word Ephraim used. And Ephraim is Israel. It's the same thing. Ephraim was one of Joseph's sons, and sometimes Israel was referred to as Ephraim. But that was, does anybody remember how many tribes there were? 12. All right, 10 of them formed the kingdom of Israel right here. All right, that left 2, and they formed Judah or Judea, which is where Jesus was born. So that was the southern kingdom, Judea. Now Jeremiah was from Judah or Judea, and he lived in a little town. All right, that should be Jerusalem, I think. I'm not real sure. But he lived in a little town called Anathoth, which was 3 miles north, directly north of Jerusalem. All right, so it would be right in here. I can't keep this still. But in other words, he just was in Judah. He just was over the border there. And the Jerusalem, of course, is in Judah. Even though there's only two tribes, Judah and Benjamin joined together, this is where Jerusalem was, and of course it's where the temple stood. And that made it very important, the temple, because all the Jews, the only place they can offer a sacrifice is at the temple. So a lot of these had to cross over from the northern part into the southern part of these feast days. And so to keep that from happening, they built the idols, the golden calves and stuff like that, so they'd worship and not come to Judah because they were afraid if they came there, they'd stay. So at the time of Jeremiah, he prophesied from, let me get this right now, 627 to 582 BC. And I trust all the young people know what BC stands for because they're trying to revise our history books and get everybody mixed up. But BC means before the birth of Christ. And you count down. Jeremiah from 627 to 582, that would be 45 years. All right, now please take this. I don't want you to misunderstand what I'm about to say. But on January the 5th, which is today, January 5th, 1975, I brought my first message at the Lumber City Baptist Church. If you will do your math, you will see that's 45 years. I'm not trying to claim in any way that I'm connected to Jeremiah or that I, am some kind of prophet. I'm just saying that's a coincidence. 45 years ago today, it was on a Sunday that I spoke in Lumber City, and of course I was a layman. I was not ordained, and don't know that made any difference anyway. But I just wanted to point that out to you. The king, when Jeremiah started preaching, was King Josiah. He was the last good king that Judah had. So Judah had a total of 20 kings. 8 of them were good, 12 of them were wicked. Israel had 20 kings, all of them were wicked. God allowed them to be taken, it's been taken into captivity. They had already been taken away into captivity by that time. Now, wouldn't you think that when the northern kingdom was taken away for their wickedness, that the southern kingdom would straighten up? Wouldn't you think that would be a wake-up call? It wasn't. And 136 years later, the southern, there are actually 3 different deportations. All of them were done by King Nebuchadnezzar. You know him now. That's from the book of Daniel. It's the same guy. Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, and Daniel, all of them were taken in the first deportation in 605 BC. The second one was in 597 BC, and Ezekiel was taken in that one, the prophet Ezekiel. The third deportation was in 586, and that closed the show. In other words, they took the really intelligent, bright young people in the first deportation. The second one was sort of the middle class, and the third one was just whoever was left. And in the end, there wasn't nobody left but just the very poor and the ones who were feeble, who could not make a 500-mile trip on foot. They left them. And they also left Jeremiah, because Jeremiah had been warning the people for 40 years that this was going to happen. And then when it actually happened, King Nebuchadnezzar was so appreciative of Jeremiah that he let him stay he didn't take him into captivity. That's good news. There's some bad news that will accompany that, which I won't let out right now. But at the time of the beginning of the book of Jeremiah, I'm trying as hard as I can to get started on it, but you need to know a little bit of the history so you'll know what's the problem here. If you'll study history, which none of you want to do, I understand, you will discover that history is a story of the rise and fall of nations. Right now, the United States is the superpower of the world. We will not always be. In fact, if we're that by this time next year, I will be surprised. But anyway, if the United States, when it collapses, it doesn't mean that everybody in the world will now get along. That everybody there'll just be another country that will rise and become the most powerful. I suspect it will be Russia. I can't prove that yet, but I suspect it'll be Russia. But anyway, that's the way it's always been in history. Nations rise and nations fall. And they never get along. Now, Jesus was born at a time when there was no major wars going on, but that was very unusual. If you'll study the history of the world, if you could ever find a world history book, I don't think they make them anymore, but if you could find one, you would see that the story of man is a story of warfare. One country builds up, takes over their neighbors, and then they collapse and another country comes in. All right, in the time of Jeremiah, the main country at that time was Assyria. Now, when I say that, some people don't understand. Some people think it's Syria. No, Assyria. I heard a preacher one time on TV. I couldn't believe it. My blood pressure went up. He was identifying Syria and Assyria as the same country. Assyria was the northern part of the modern country of Iraq. They were the main power at the time Jeremiah started preaching. However, Jeremiah said they're on the way out. There's another country coming that's going to be stronger than them. But nobody believed him. See, that's the thing about Jeremiah. He makes me feel better because nobody believed him either. I can't get anybody to believe me. I've been predicting for years that judgment is coming to America, but then nobody believes it. Oh, they say they do. They give verbal assent to it. But if we really believe that judgment was coming to America, we wouldn't be so excited about a new year. I'm not excited about 2020, especially this election. We've had warfare practically for 3 years already, and you can imagine how ugly it's going to get between now and November. And that's just America. All right, that's not counting the Iranians, bombing our embassy or things like that. We're in trouble. Y'all are at the right place. We need a revival. I don't mean a Monday through Friday. I mean a real revival. But in that day it was Assyria, but Jeremiah kept saying there's a country coming from the north called Babylon, and they will be the ones you need to be worrying about. And everybody said, oh, you're crazy. But in 605, make sure I get this right, 605 BC, Babylon defeated the armies of Assyria and Egypt. Those two countries tried to stop them. And so they will be, and since Judah had lined up on the side of Egypt, when Nebuchadnezzar got control, he's going to punish them for it, see. That's what Jeremiah's going to be preaching about. He's known as the weeping prophet, based on Scripture, chapter 9, verse 1. Here's the problem with Jeremiah, besides the fact that it's 52 chapters long, it is not in chronological order. That's why it's so very important in the first verse of a lot of these chapters, not all of them, but a lot of these chapters, it'll say in the year, the fourth year of King such and such or whatever. Remember, there are only two that ruled that long. That was Jehoiakim and Zedekiah. But it'll go back in two. So don't let that bother you now. Just fasten your seatbelt. And we have, good grief, chapter 1, verse 1. The words of Jeremiah, the son of Hilkiah, of the priests that were in Anathoth in the land of Benjamin. See, he was from Benjamin, but Benjamin had joined together with Judah to make the kingdom of Judea. His father was a priest. His grandfather was a priest. Jeremiah probably thought he would be a priest. What's the difference between a priest and a prophet? Well, I'm glad y'all asked, because that was part of the introduction that I forgot. There are several differences. The priest was the easier job. He did the same thing about every day. All he had to do was carry out instructions. It was like reading a manual. They would bring the sacrifice to the priest. The priest would slaughter the sacrifice. He'd lay the hands on the head of the guy that brought the sacrifice. He would examine people to see if they had leprosy and things like that. He did the same thing. You talk about boring. He did the same thing day after day. But a prophet never knew where he would be or what he'd be doing each day. For example, Elijah. Elijah one day he'd go to the palace and give a message to Ahab and Jezebel. Then he went and hid for down at a brook till the brook dried up. Then he went to a widow lady's house. She fed him. I mean, he was just all over the place. A priest usually dealt with people one-to-one. You come with a sacrifice, the priest would talk to you, he would slaughter your sacrifice and so forth. But a prophet would speak to crowds. He would speak to nations. A prophet was somewhat, we would think, like an evangelist. He would speak to entire nations and warn them. The priest didn't do a lot of preaching. He just, as I said, he was mainly involved in the sacrifices and putting out the showbread every day and doing a lot of ritual stuff. Light the candles, put out the candles. Yeah. But the prophet, he was all over the place. The priest was supported by offerings from the people. The people would bring food. They had a place there at the temple called the storehouse. They would bring the food, put it in the storehouse. The stuff they had grown. They didn't give him money. They gave him like vegetables and stuff they had grown. The prophet, however, he had no particular source of income. Somebody might give him something, somebody might not. He may be broke today. God would lead him somewhere. Somebody'd feed him. So the prophet was involved in all kind of things, while the priest was just stationed there at the temple. And he'd work an 8-hour shift, and then somebody else. All right? Now, Jeremiah, however, was called to be a prophet. That's in verse 5. Now listen to what God says to him here in verse 5. Before I formed thee in the belly, I knew thee. Before you were ever born. How about it now? What do we hear a lot of debate about in America these days? Abortion. Okay? What does the Bible say? Does the Bible say anything about babies before they're born? three people in the Bible, Jeremiah, Isaiah, and John the Baptist, God said he knew them in their mother's womb. I want all of you to understand that when a woman is pregnant, she is pregnant with a baby. That's what she's got. That's why if somebody kills a pregnant woman, they can be charged with double homicide. It wouldn't be double homicide if that was just a piece of tissue in there and it didn't. I just get really irritated on this abortion stuff. It's just so clear that when a woman is pregnant, she is pregnant with a baby. And modern science now has verified, you've all seen those sonogram type things, where the baby's so many weeks, they can feel pain and so many weeks. And yet here we are with our dumb laws saying that they can go up to 9 months, and in Virginia, I believe the governor there, he's in favor of killing them after they're born, after they come out of the, Virginia's in bad shape. If any of y'all are from Virginia, I'm sorry for you. They're in bad shape. But, of course, they're not the only state. California's in a mess, but New York. But we've got some just ridiculous stuff in this country. The Bible is very clear. That's why I want to go over this. The call of Jeremiah, God said, before you were formed in your mother's womb. I don't understand that, but I believe it. That God knew us before we were ever born. Before you came forth out of the womb, I sanctified thee, which means set thee apart, and I ordained thee a prophet unto the nations. Now, that was before he was even born. It wasn't like Jeremiah decided one day, I'll be a prophet. God had already called him. All right, if you'll give me about between 5 and 10 minutes, I'll quit. And now listen to this answer that Jeremiah gave God and see if it reminds you of somebody else. Y'all just ring in when you know the answer. Then said I, Lord God, behold, I cannot speak, for I am a child. Who else had an excuse similar to that? Moses. It sounds just like Moses. Moses said, Lord, I can't speak clearly. I stutter. I can't. And God said, okay, I'll send Aaron, your brother, to be your spokesman. Here's what's funny. Don't ever think the Bible doesn't have any humor in it. Here's what's funny. God sent Moses and Aaron to the Pharaoh, and Moses had Aaron with him because he couldn't speak. And yet when he got there, Aaron never said a word. Moses did all the talking. Go back and look it up. So when he says here, I am a child, that has been misunderstood. Just think of all those people that didn't come today, they won't know this. It does not mean that he was in the nursery. It means he was a young person. The Hebrew word there for child can include up to 20 years old. So we believe that he was probably around 20. What it meant was he had no experience. He was not used to getting up in front of people and talking. I'm a child. I'm not trained. I'm not. But I want y'all to get this, and then I'll be accomplished what I want to do in chapter 1. Listen to what the Lord said to him when he gave this excuse. And by the way, I've got an idea. We got some people in this building that God has called to do some things, and you've got a pretty good excuse. That's the main thing we look for when the Lord speaks to us, is to try to get God to get somebody else to do it. We know it needs to be done, but we don't want to do it. We want somebody else to do it. But the Lord said unto me, watch this now, say not, I am a child, for thou shalt go to all that I send thee, and whatsoever I command thee thou shalt speak. Be not afraid of their faces, for I am with thee to deliver thee, saith the Lord. You will need to remember that verse through Wednesday night. When we get out of here Wednesday night at midnight, you need to still remember this verse. I was wondering if anybody was awake. All right, there's 3 things here I want y'all to see. You can use this now. This isn't just for Jeremiah. Number one, God says, I want you to go where I send you. Did you get it? Go where I send you. Maybe he hasn't sent you overseas or to go to Africa or somewhere, but what about your neighbor down the road? Go where I send you. Number two, say what I tell you to say. See, here's our problem. We don't want to do what God tells us to do because we don't know how to speak to people. We don't know what to say. God said, you just say what I put on your, I'll give you what to say. You just open your mouth. And then number three, he says, don't be afraid of the people you're talking to because you're going to condemn some of their lifestyles. You're going to say some things that they're not going to like, and they're probably going to change churches because they don't like the way you said it. But you say what I tell you, and you don't be afraid of them, because after you have spoken to them, so they run you off. Are there more than one church in Appling County? Yeah. I mean, I'm not here to be run off, but if I am, there's somewhere else to go. That's one thing I don't worry about. I worry about everything else, but one thing I don't worry about, if I get run off from one church, there'll be somewhere else. And I won't ever get to all of them. 3 things. Have y'all got it? If y'all got it now, we can leave. Number 1, go where God sends you. This is if you're a child of God. If you're lost now, you need to be saved. That's your problem. None of this stuff applies to you. You need to be saved. But if you're a Christian, go where God sends you. It won't be somewhere dramatic, usually. It's not going to be that God's going to send you to Madison Square Garden. Number 2, say what he's told you to say, not what you think should be said. And number 3, don't be afraid that you'll offend somebody. Isn't that relevant? I mean, you know, when you think about Jeremiah, you're about to go to town and to eat lunch, and you'll say, we're studying Jeremiah, and somebody will say, oh, that's so boring, or that was a long time ago, or, you know, that doesn't have anything to do with us. Oh, yeah. You're going to see when he starts preaching the messages that it's going to sound very much like what America needs to hear. That's what really sold me on this book. This is America. This is how a nation that had been blessed of God, that were God's chosen people, and how they drifted on in wickedness and unbelief until God allowed them to be taken over. Same thing's going to happen here. Same thing. I know you don't want to hear it, and I know people say, "Oh, you're just too negative." I want to hear somebody with a positive. Well, I'm just telling you what the Bible says. And then the Lord touched his mouth. Most of us will never have that happen, where God personally touched his mouth and said, I put my words in your mouth. Now all we got to do is find us somewhere to preach, and we can open up again tonight at 6:30. But in the meantime, we have our minister of music here. We have our pianist. We have all kinds of musicians here. It'd be a pity to let y'all leave and not give you a chance to make a decision for Jesus this morning. And decisions for Jesus come in various sizes and shapes. If you're here and you never have been saved, in other words, if you died today, you would go to hell. You need to come this morning and let Brother Darrell or some of his able assistants around here show you how that you can be saved and be ready to go to heaven when you die. But you may want to come and rededicate your life. It's the first Sunday of the year. We got all these resolutions. We're going to lose weight. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. Why not make a resolution that you're going to spend more time praying studying your Bible, you know, you can make a New Year's resolution today. Or maybe you want to come and pray for somebody that's in really bad shape. They're members of this church, or they're your friends. There's somebody in this county. I can promise you that every church in Appling County this morning has the longest prayer list they've ever had. There's more people sick now than there's ever been. The fact that me and you are here is a blessing that we're able to be here. A lot of our classmates, several of you went to school with me, but our classmates are gone. God has blessed us that we're still here. There must be something he wants us to do. He's left us here not just to fill up a pew, but to do something. And you don't have to tell me and Brother Darrell what it is. It's none of our business. I didn't come here to be an undercover agent. But Jonathan is going to lead us. Let's all stand and sing maybe a couple of verses. Brother Darrell, you decide, though, if you want to go more than two, but at least a couple of verses to give people a chance. If you want to come pray at the altar, and we will not disturb you if you don't want to be disturbed. Lord, I'm coming home. That's a good one. That's a good one.
I was